Very good morning, friends. I'm really happy to have Dr. Vinod Dumblekar, the founder of MANTIS, who has been very popular in conducting simulation games in the name of Chanakya. Before we proceed to the session by Dr. Vinodji, I would like to brief about the professional body, particularly about the aims. Friends, over 33 years ago, a glorious and a highly impact-making body called Association of Indian Management Schools, in short we say AIMS, a network of management institutions offering postgraduate courses was born on 27th August 1988 in Bangalore. It is a non-profit making society registered under Karnataka Societies Registration Act of 1960. Friends, as an independent networking body for professional development of management of education in India, AIMS takes pride in having nearly 800 top-class institutions like IIMs, ISB, ASCII, Xavier institutions, Wellinger Group of Institutions, V School, NMIMS, Jamnalal Bajaj, ICFI, MDI, SP Jain. There are several other business schools and many management departments of various universities as its members. It is one of the largest networking bodies of B schools in the world. And it is the official representative of Indian management schools in India, as well as in some important international forums also. The major activities of AIMS, I would like to share for the benefit of all the members here. It acts as policy advocacy. One of the major activities of AIMS is its policy advocacy role to safeguard the interests of management institutions in all respects. The president of AIMS is an ex officio member of the Board of Management Studies of All India Council for Technical Education. AIMS has been thinking of having more say in the formulation of regulations by AICTE and MHRD relating to different categories of management institutions. Apart from the advocacy role, the AIMS also conducts national management event, that is annual management education convention. Every year it is conducted and several awards and recognitions are also being done. AIMS V School Innovation Award, AIMS ICFI Business School Best Teacher Award, AIMS Ramaswamy Iyer Best Young Teacher Award, AIMS Best Case Award, AIMS Best Student Paper Award, AIMS JL Batra Best Research Paper Award, AIMS National Management Week Award, and AIMS RCM Best B School Director Award. There are several awards. Apart from that, the very hallmark of AIMS is Ravi J. Mathai National Fellow Award. And this award is the flagship award, which is also bestowed during the AIMS annual convention to management educators and professionals for achieving a high level of distinction in their respective discipline. Friends, AIMS also conducts AIMS test for management admissions, ATMA we say, for the benefit of the students who would like to take admission in top-class business schools in the country. AIMS also provides financial assistance to member institutions for conducting seminars, workshops, case studies, and it charges very nominal amount of fee for various activities conducted by AIMS on a regular basis. And AIMS also has one of the very popular journals, UGC referred journal, AIMS Journal of Management. It is a biannual journal, and we are also thinking of making it a quarterly journal because huge number of research papers we are receiving. Professor Upinder Dhar, the Vice Chancellor, is the chief editor of this journal. And AIMS also has network with other professional bodies across the world, like ACBSP, AMDISA, and EFMD. Apart from offering various programs, webinars, workshops, etc., we have initiated this even online also. Today is one among the such kind of initiatives by AIMS. Currently, the AIMS has the president of Professor Ajit Singh and treasurer Professor Parag Kalkar, and it has been steered by very, very illustrious professional leaders. It has 4 chapters, 4 regions, north, east, west, south, and every chapter is given a lot of support for conducting these kind of programs, spreading management education, helping the student community, helping the faculty of the member institutions. This is one of the very, very distinguished activities of AIMS. And today, we are going to have a webinar in experiential learning by Professor and Dr. Vinod Dumblekar. As I was telling that there are always institutions working for various methods, various techniques, tools to engage the students. There is various pedagogical tools we are using, particularly management education, professional education. These are all outcome-based education. There is no doubt about it. But making education more engaging, more productive, and more, experiential. For that, various tools, various pedagogical methods we are using. And one among them, very, very experiential learning is simulation games. Before we proceed to the presentation by Dr. Vinod Dumblekar, I would like to give a brief about Dr. Vinod. Friends, Dr. Vinod Dumblekar was the founder of MANTIS in 2003, which designs, develops, and conducts simulation-based experiential learning and experiential games. The games cover business operations, business strategy, corporate strategy, marketing and brand management, entrepreneurship, project management, and energy for managers and management students in a wide variety of complexity, objectives, and scenarios. The learning games have also been offered as competitions. MANTIS games have served over 90 management and engineering institutions and over 50 business firms since 2003 in nearly 30 Indian cities and Dubai, Austria, and Thailand. His papers on simulation games are presented at Munich, Atlanta, Singapore, Warsaw, and Bangkok, in addition to papers on marketing, finance, learning, and management psychology. He is the only Indian in the 55-year-old International Simulation Gaming Association, ISAGA, we call it, and its webinars at Indore. He has been associated with the Thai Simulation and Gaming Association, Bangkok, since 2010 and has been an associate editor of ISAGA, which is very, very premium journal on simulations and gaming since 2006. He is a trainer, researcher, and multidisciplinary consultant, professional mentor, and management teacher with over 4 decades of managerial and entrepreneurial in commercial and merchant banking, finance, and financial services, and business education. He had held various positions as a bank manager, professor, president, director in different organizations. He teaches postgraduate courses in strategic management, business strategy, corporate strategy, mergers and acquisitions, private equity and venture capital, international business, organizational behavior, and the most important, the startup India, stand-up India, like entrepreneurship. Really very happy to have Dr. Vinod with us today. And as I was telling, there are various methods we use for experiential learning, both offline and online. And we are going to enjoy the next 60 minutes by Professor Vinod Dumblekar. After that, there are some questions which are raising by the participants. I request all the participants to text your questions in the chat box so that we can save a lot of time and I can take the questions and pose to Dr. Vinodji. That's all from my side. Now I request Dr. Vinod Dumblekar to take over. Vinodji, over to you.
Thank you, sir. Let me share my screen and I'll keep talking to you as things happen.
Yeah, you can speak louder, sir.
Yes, sir. Sir, first of all, I hope I'm audible.
Yeah.
We have played games since we were infants. When we are young, we don't learn so much, but as we grow older, we realize that games are of use to us. And then we actually construct these experiences or these events so that we learn further from there. Today, I'm going to describe to you how we can learn from simulation games and also have fun while learning. I would like to thank Dr. Prasada Rao for having invited me and for the Association of Management Schools and for the members to be present here to listen to what I have to say to them. The world of simulation games is a multidisciplinary domain. It has lots of things into it, so much so that even experts and practitioners have disagreed on what exactly it seems to mean. What is its scope? What are its implications? What goes into it? What comes out? Whom does it serve? And so on. Initially, I will try to extract some meaning out of it, but most of the definitions, etc., and the meaning is probably mine. So here goes. Simulation games, those are two words. So let's understand what a simulation is. A simulation is merely a replication or a depiction of something that happened in the past. So you have stories that you would like to tell, and you would like to maybe tell it in a very brief way. So you have something to do with replication. You're not repeating the same thing exactly in the form it was earlier. It's slightly smaller. I could give you two quick examples of this. One is a photo of the Empire State Building, which all of us know is 113 or 116 floors tall. You could also think of the Burj building in Dubai, where it's probably taller than that. And you think now of the photo, just a passport size photo. That passport size photo is a simulation. So therefore, here is a photo that depicts, represents, and to some extent in a very limited way, narrates what a tall building could look like. When you were young, you played with toys, toy cars, baby dolls, or whatever it is. Those toy cars and baby dolls are basically smaller forms of what is real. Now, if you think that the simulation was only to do with the past, let's go further and see what we can extend, how we can extend this further. On the left, you have a dragon. On the right, you have a Pegasus, the winged horse. These are fabrications of the mind. These are stories that have entered our imagination and our books. The dragon seems to be popular with Chinese stories. Pegasus emanated in the Greek mythology. These are, like I said, the imagined world. If you can write stories about this, you also have a simulation. A simulation that excites you because you don't know what happens next. And it's different from the real world. So you have something that can fly. The dragon can talk in terms of fire, and the horse can fly because of its wings. It's an unnatural horse.
Vinodji,
Yeah.
please change the slide. Still, you are in the introduction?
Where am I on the first slide? Which slide am I
First
on?
slide only still there. That introductory is there.
Okay, I think
Move.
I will go back and start all over again. Let me see what happens.
Yeah. You can press F5 so that it will be full screen.
1 minute, there is one more page.
Yeah, now it is full. Yeah, done. Done, sir.
Okay, I will repeat what I said briefly.
Yeah.
A photo of an Empire State Building is a simulation because it represents very quickly something that is real and very briefly as well. A toy car or a baby doll does the same thing. Now, if you can take it further in terms of imagination, something that is not real, this also is simulation. On the left-hand side, you have a dragon. Typically, you see dragons from the Chinese literature. When you hear of dragon, you think about China. And then on the right side, you have Pegasus, the winged horse, which is familiar to Greek mythology. I could take the story further, but I think you could Google it out and find out what the Pegasus stood for. In both cases, it's an imagination, it's an extension. It still is a narration of something that never happened. So you could also have a science fiction story, something that never probably will happen, but you think will happen maybe 10 years, 20 years into the future. That also is a simulation. The second part of simulation games is a game. So what do we do in a game? In a game, we compete with each other. There is a prize at the end of it. There's an award. We get on to stand on a pedestal if we win. It's something rare. It challenges us. It excites us. A game is something that brings out the best out of us. A game that is something that engages us and makes us do something. It makes us act. It makes us behave. And there's a prize at the end of it. It is a prize that makes the game different from a simulation. In a game, you also write in the middle of it. It is possible that in a simulation, you're only watching a play or reading a book about a dragon or a Pegasus. But in a game, to be excited, you got to be right in the middle of the pitch playing that game. Now, that's a game. Now, how can you have a simulation game? A simulation game is one that represents reality or the future or an imagined world, and yet to have players competing and playing against each other. To the best of my understanding, the most commonly understood simulation game is chess. Chess represents battle between two armies. They fight to protect their king and queen. There are soldiers in the form of pawns. There's a crook, there's a rook, and there is a knight. And of course, as in ancient battles, there is also a bishop. And these battle against each other. You can also look at more current a simulation game such as war games. There is one called Battlecraft, simpler ones, which are also trying to simulate battles. Now, a simulation game, therefore, is one that has the best elements of the meaning of a simulation and the meaning of a game. Something that represents and something that allows you to participate for an unspelt award, all for yourself. So therefore, maybe you could indulge in a quiet exercise while I keep presenting these slides to you. Case study, news report, poetry, panchatantra, a map, theory, a sale, and elections. How many of these are simulations? How many of these could be games? How many of these could be both simulations and games? You could think about it, and perhaps at the end of this my presentation, you could discuss this when you have some questions about these things at the end of this particular presentation. Now, how do we learn from games? This is something that I know that all of us are keen to know. First of all, we find roots and connections with something called experiential learning. This was first put forward by Kolb, to the best of my knowledge, though there have been roots earlier in the day. Kolb suggests that the beginning is in the experience at the top, which goes towards the right. We are going in a clockwise direction, where we have reflective observation. At the bottom, we have abstract conceptualization. On the left-hand side, we have active experimentation. At the top, we have concrete experience again. Let me explain this in English. Let's look at rain, or rather clouds. At the top, we have an event called clouds that rain. That is, we see clouds, we see that it rains. We are able to watch these clouds and the rain on the right-hand side, reflective observation. We slowly deduce something from there. A deduction is that clouds lead to rain. This is experience. So from there, we have now made a conclusion called abstract conceptualization. We have developed a concept for ourselves. From there, what do? We do active experimentation. How do we do that? We see clouds, and next time we go out, we take out an umbrella with us. And it rains. It's a good thing. So the feeling that we had, that conceptualization that we had, which was abstract, now becomes embedded in us in a kind of behavior and thinking forever. But suppose we do this 2-3 times, or maybe the next time we go out with the umbrella, it does not rain. It tends to correct our thinking, but then it adds to our experience. We think better now. Would we have understood anything about the clouds and the rain had we not watched this particular event? A second question. If there were clouds and the rain, all the time we have it during the rainy season here. But unless you look at it, would we have been able to draw any conclusions? Which means you had lots of events yesterday, last week, last year, last month. Lots of things have happened. But you have not, if you have not looked upon these events reflectively, look at that word on the right. If you're not drawn any conclusions, that means you're not conceptualized about it. You're not drawn any conclusions by means of which you can say, if I did this, that would happen. Then you would not have occasion to learn anything from there. The summary of this slide here is that you can learn from experience, but that experience and experience only when you convert the event into something that you can reflect back and draw conclusions from. Let's take it a little further. Sometimes I'll take this argument a little sideways as well. This comes from the taxonomy of learning objectives by somebody called Bloom. Bloom made the original pyramid on the left. He said that there are 6 different ways in which you can learn. The bottommost strata of this pyramid is very familiar to us. All our students and universities and schools and colleges understand what is knowledge. Knowledge is what is in the books and is information. But comprehension is a little different. Comprehension is understanding beyond the book, beyond the syllabus, connecting it with things in the real life, and where the student is able to explain without the aid of, let us say, a book or a PowerPoint, a slide, and so on. There are levels, other levels at the top, such as application, use of that knowledge, going far back in terms of analysis, using that knowledge in terms of synthesis and creating, etc. On the right-hand side is a far more improved version of learning. But all this, if you look at it, these are some elements, some connections with learning from experience. That experience, the more you reflect on that experience, the more capable you become in terms of taking this from the bottom to the higher levels. These models are easily available on the internet, so I suspect you should be able to get them very easily and draw some wisdom from there. You will find also connections with respect to skill formation from games, but I bring you linkage with respect to what the World Economic Forum said in the past. They have been listing the top 10 skills required for employment, for people, and so on for several years. This is not the latest, but in 2020, we had items like complex problem solving, critical thinking, and creativity as being the top 10 skills, whatever be your profession. These are things that are easily created, things that emerge in a game. And by game, I include a simulation game, because complex problem solving, critical thinking, creativity are products of action, are products of reflection, are products of experience. Let me take it to the current period. This is 2025. We are still in 2022, but I think we can prepare for something that is clear in the future. The critical thinking now has moved into first position. Analysis of problems and actually solving problems is in second and third position. We can ignore the third, fourth, and the fifth items for the time being. What has this to do with games? Well, games makes it easier. Playing games makes it easier to think critically, analyze situations in front of you, and solve problems. Often playing games makes people independent thinkers and independent doers. Often playing games helps you think for the remaining part of your life, well beyond the course is over. This is a pyramid that is probably most familiar to you. It was available on some brochure about 20 years back. It broadly says things that we are implicitly aware about. We know that if we speak, the impact is not much. If I speak for 60 minutes, I suspect you'll remember only 3 minutes of what I say. That's what the lecture 5% says. If you were to read something like what I show on the screen, I think you will double up what you can retain and what you can understand. And as you go further down the pyramid, you realize that action is what helps you learn. Practice by doing, talking amongst yourselves, and so on. As teachers, we understand. Look at the bottom. Teach each others, teach others, immediate use. When you use something or when you teach others, we learn far better than the student. Let's invert this pyramid and understand things in a different way. Here, Dale is very explicit. You look at that 90% and the second row at the top, it says simulating the real experience. The pyramid in the previous slide has been inverted in this slide. You can see reading is at the bottom with 10%, hearing words is 20%, and so on. Both the pyramids put together broadly suggest that doing is learning. Doing is the source for learning because doing becomes an event, and the event is something that you can reflect on, and that provides the experience from where you can draw conclusions. And if you think in terms of that call model that I showed you earlier, it is that experience that helps you draw conclusions for yourself and you learn. Remember, two people watching an event at the same time will have two different reflective opinions and therefore two different experiences of the same event and therefore two different conclusions. And for all you know, both could be right. Why simulations are games? Here I'm going to go deeper in terms of explaining why simulations and games could be useful to us. There are many reasons, and I'm going to give you only 12 of them. In a game, you plan for the future. In a class, you study the past. When you look at a book, the book tells you all that has happened in the last 500 years, 1,000 years, or 5,000 years. But history, well, history is dead. The problem that is going to affect you is going to come tomorrow or the next week or maybe 5 minutes from now. In a game, you're planning for that goal. Or if it's cricket, you're planning to attack the bowler or whatever. In chess, you're trying to make a move that can confound and conflict or confuse your opponent. So you're thinking about the future. You're also solving problems. You're not collecting information. How much information can you collect? In these days of Wikipedia and khanacademy.org and the entire Google universe out there, why do you want to remember information? It's much better to develop the ability to solve problems. Third, thinking, exploring, doing, acting is what you do in a game. Or rather, the game coaxes you, urges you, pushes you to think deeper, to explore. Can we do this? Can we do that? And so on. And find it to do something rather than merely memorize something, which is, of course, not needed today. Then we have role play versus role study. A game is something that is a play, is a position where you get engrossed in because you participate. That is a role. The participation is that of a manager or maybe like a battle general, as in chess. That kind of thinking, that kind of positioning, that kind of imagination puts you far ahead of the rest, rather than merely memorizing something that you do in class. In fact, you can learn far faster, many times faster, not 2 or 3 or 4 times, but 23, 30, 40, 100 times faster if you want to go get into a role play. Attitudes and ability. It's far more important to improve attitudes and ability than knowledge. Knowledge is available anywhere. It's there on the table in front of you. It is there in the library, just across 2 or 3 rooms, wherever you sit in college and class. But ability, attitudes, well, that's different. Your attitude is born out of your beliefs, your mindset, your courage, your optimism, and so on. These things take maybe a generation to build if you wait for nature to take its own sweet time to change you. But if you were to play a game, I think your attitude could change overnight. A game is very powerful. And if you have the right attitude, the right ability is easy to build. You can't build an ability that fights against an indifferent attitude. If you have an attitude of very low courage, it is difficult to build an attitude of skill where you can overpower somebody else. So an attitude which builds on confidence or self-efficacy comes only when you play a game. It is far faster, more powerful than merely collecting knowledge. We're all familiar with the word pedagogy. Pedagogy means teaching the child. We continue to use pedagogy for the college student, for the postgraduate student, and I suspect for the PhD student as well, where the child is probably far beyond his 21 years of legal age. What is the difference between pedagogy and andragogy? Andragogy is the learning of the adult, learning, not teaching. Now, why does the adult behave differently? Adult says, don't teach me, I know. Adult is so full of other mindsets and beliefs and conclusions in his mind that he is not able to receive what you say. Just test yourself now. How much of what I have said have you been prepared to accept? Now, in this short duration of barely 30 minutes of my talk, how much of whatever I said have you accepted at face value? If I had said the same thing to children, they would have accepted it immediately as correct, right, good, etc. But you adults are fighting your way and mentally saying, this is wrong. How does he say that? I don't understand it. Where does he say this from? Where is his experience? You're challenging me all the time. That's because you're adults. So how do we get adults to learn? We need adults to learn. When people learn, they change for the better. So how do we get adults to learn? Well, the easiest way is to give him a problem and say, solve this problem. Give him broad instructions. Sometimes don't give him instructions. Give him the resources, leave him alone. If you have an SOP, give it to him so that he can remain with it and SOP. And let him solve the problem on his own. He will make mistakes, he'll learn from the mistakes. Above all, nobody has told him what is to be done and how it's to be done. He is grateful that you are not advised him. He is grateful that you are not giving him instructions. He does not want to be instructed. And he learns on his own. How? By working things out on his own. That is andragogy. And that's what happened in games. When Virat Kohli is playing in the middle of the pitch, his coach does not go and tell him how to hold the bat. Nor does any of the lesser players as well. Andragogy you've seen plenty in games, where everybody is treated like an adult, even if that player is about 5 to 7 years old. Because there again, the child acts like an adult, wanting to learn from the experience and from solving problems. Creative thinking from recognizing problems. You can think creatively only when you are confronted with problems. If you do not see problems, or if the world does not give you some kind of adversity, why should you think at all? But the game presents you a number of things which you have to react to, sometimes very quickly. Look at all the games that you've looked at. Cricket and badminton and chess and all the things you can think of. All of them, there's somebody or the other offering you something that obstructs you and which you must clear the way, and therefore you can go forward. And the very fact that you are trying to create this, remove this obstruction, makes you think harder, makes you think creatively in ways that nobody else has thought about, most importantly, in ways that you have not thought about earlier. And once you've thought about it creatively, you will tend to use that as a role for yourself in future, which means you have now discovered the ability to solve a problem. It corrects your attitudes. If you thought this was not possible, by playing a game, you would have found that it is possible. You will build correction. You will build conviction. You will build new behaviors. I suspect introverts will become extroverts. I know for a fact that some 17, 18 years back, we were playing in Indore. A girl stood up and said that I was doing specialization in HR so far, but now that I've played the game, I want to get into a finance specialization. We were stunned. We did not believe this was possible. And there are many other stories like this. In one game where we asked participants, whenever they discovered something, all they had to do was stand up and say, aha. There are so many people doing aha that after 3 rounds, we asked them to stop. So you discover something every few moments when you play a game. And once your behavior gets corrected, there is no way that you can fall back in older behavior. You have discovered that new behavior, And that new behavior fits in with the world. Exploration and experimentation. Because when you play a game, you are alone out there. No teacher, no parent, no coach, nobody is next to you, alone. And when you play alone, you got to find answers to your own problems. So you explore, you go this way or that, and sometimes you wonder, can I do this and see what happens? Okay, so you experiment. And some of these actions you find work, some of them don't. And you make errors and you learn from those errors. That's a good thing. Which other experience or which other activity in education gives you this kind of benefits? Okay, learning without embarrassment, fear, rebuke, or other judgment. In class, we have that experience of seeing other people's marks. And if I'm at the bottom of the class, then I'm not going to look at the notice board which declares my CGPA and GPA numbers and grades, etc. Because I know that I've got a C plus or a B minus, etc. But in a simulation game, nobody gets any marks. Everybody is so excited at what he has been able to solve, as to how much he has progressed in learning, as to how much he has progressed in whatever is done in the game, that he wants nothing else in a game. He just wants the game to continue forever. There are no marks. He can never be embarrassed in a game. Even when I go back to that example, even when Virat Kohli gets bowled for a duck, he's not feeling embarrassed. He just says it's an experiment or an exploration that has gone bad. And he's back the next day, having learned from it, and he's back to scoring his centuries. Same thing with any other chess player or badminton player. There's no embarrassment. There's no fear. And finally, disciplines. When we play our games, yes, maybe we call it a business operations game, etc., etc., but that is only the name, a title outside. But once you get deep in, we don't know what names we can give. Shall we call it HR? Shall we call it leadership? Shall we call it finance? Shall we call it cash? It's difficult because several disciplines actually merge and blend and clash with each other when you actually play a game. Which is why most of the more popular games have not been deciphered in terms of several threads of whatever it is. Otherwise, all the games would have been excellent cases for learning strategy or human behavior or behavior within the teams. But nobody has studied the Indian team within the team for leadership or for interpersonal behavior, etc., etc. We learn faster from interactions. That we have a one-day game for the first week of postgraduate management students in class. Often these postgraduate management students in class are not in BBAs. They have no exposure to business or even like commerce or accounting. But they have heard about cash, they understand English, which are the two elements which were required to play a game, and they play the game. And within about a day, they get to understand almost all of the stuff that is required to understand about business and on management in just 6 hours of game. 6 hours is equal to 1 year. We have a 2-year game, which covers much more than what might be covered in a 2-year MBA program in just 2 days. Sometimes you spread it to 3 days or 4 days or 5 days, or sometimes maybe a full course of 30 hours. But the coverage is vast because simulation is a compression. Simulation cuts across time and space and processes and disciplines and this and that. And yet everybody can study and experience and learn at the same time without saying, that is finance, that's not for me. This is marketing. I don't like marketing. And yet to get deep into it, and you can forget your fear of this and that. Knowledge is created from action, outcomes, and reflection. I think you've said this so many times before, so I won't repeat it. There is deeper learning of faster unlearning from facilitation. When we play games for our students, our unlearning is about 50%, 40%, 50%, maybe 20% from first year students and maybe 40, 50% for second year students. When we play it for the adults, like in corporates such as Larsen, Tobro, Siemens, DHL, etc., the unlearning is something like 60 to 70%. Only if you remove old notions and beliefs about something, about how something happens, only then you can put in something into that empty space. But the only way you can do this with adults is you give him a game with problems to solve. Once you do that, well, you don't have to tell him anything more. He'll learn the rest on his own. It does not require more intervention by teachers or trainers. It clarifies theory and encourages action. A theory is in the past and makes you move forward. After all, if you play the game and you are completely satisfied by what has happened, you have drawn conclusions, which is a theory, of course. You're convinced that you can do something in the future, which is 2-minute science, and therefore you can take action very quickly. In real life, what happens is somebody tells you to do something. That's an instruction. You don't know why. The conclusion is made by somebody else. Your ownership of that conclusion is not very strong. You half-heartedly take action. Then we have engagement and excitement and discovery that produces meaning like nothing else on earth. Only when somebody has played a game with facilitation, only then you realize a game is so wonderful. Most of us have played games without facilitation. We just play a game and then 5 minutes later, we come out of the hall and well, that's over. After that, tomorrow we go on to another chapter or some other event. That's not it. A learning game has to be associated with facilitation where somebody, a teacher, or whatever you call, explains to you and helps you get out of the unlearning stocks or things or blocks, building blocks that stop you from thinking further, helps you conclude better. So what are the most important domains in simulations and games? Or here, the G stands for not games, it stands for gaming. So what do we have the different domains? One is we have the domain of design, where the outline of how the game is to be played. It is built on a model with inputs and outputs and black boxes that explain what could be the transaction interactions and the blend of processes which convert the inputs into outputs. We also bring in issues such as who will play, what are the other resources required, how will things be measured, and so on and so forth. The development is that part where you convert the design into a game. In a game, in a development of the game, the development is where you bring in the tangibles, such as if you were to a board game, you ask about tokens and icons and markers and stuff like that. And then, of course, the board itself has required spaces, which space goes where. If it was to be a card game, what would be the kind of cards? How do you use the cards? Do you use the same set of playing cards that you used to, the one of 52, where you have 4 suites of cards, etc., or do you use something else? Then we have the facilitation as a major domain, because if you merely play the game and leave, you have only your opinion. It is important to have facilitation, which must be anywhere between 10 to 20% of the remaining part of the game, the action part of the game, to help the players understand what happened and why, and how to take it further. Because without this facilitation, these 3 or 4 elements will be lost forever. For all you know, without facilitation, some older conclusions will still be prevalent in the minds of the players, and therefore it is possible that the game might actually make you think that what you thought earlier continues to be right, when in fact it was wrong. Within facilitation, you have debriefing, which is a narrow form of attention to every one of the players, what they said, what they did, and so on. Facilitation has a larger domain. It starts from the time of delivery of documents and preparing the participants at the beginning of the game, and ends after the debriefing as well. So debriefing is only the last part. Debriefing is the explanatory part to the game. We have research. Research is important because it helps us build better games. Research helps us to understand why players were satisfied with the game, why were they happy and why they were not. Happy players recommend the game to others. Happy players, satisfied players, play the game again and again, and they say, I like it. So it's important to find those features of a particular game, and therefore, so that we can reproduce those features and make that game more exciting. For example, why does a game like PUBG become the fascination of our youngsters? Why are they not so attractive to old people like you and me, for instance? Well, of course, we have applications. Games help us reach conclusions which can be applied, but I'll take this a little further, probably in a remaining slide. Games help us understand things and apply. Individual players can conclude something and therefore say, I understood this. Now I'm going to use this when I work in my workplace. But games are used by organizations also to develop policy. If you use the right kind of elements and create a game where everybody can participate, you can create policy that helps you make better instructions, guidelines, etc., for your participants to get involved in. That is your employees. Now, how do we use simulations and games? Now, these 6 items are culled out from something like 200 different texts, reduced to something like 20, then reduced to something like 8 or 7, and then boiled it down to just 6 items where the utility of simulations and games were concerned. Knowledge into action was a theme of one of our conferences way back into 2004. When I say our conference, I speak about the International Simulation and Gaming Association. The chairperson was Willie Chris, and he sensed that the objective of games should be to convert knowledge into action. He later on wrote that games helps us, that is, the playing of games helps us test, justify, and develop theories. Testing and justification is about older theories, and developing theories, of course, once you develop it, you need to test and justify it as well. So therefore, we can develop theories as well in actual lab conditions, so to speak. At this stage, let me quickly explain what we understand to be theory. Often we think theory is something that comes from the book that whose only sole objective is to make the student bored with the idea. But actually, a theory is nothing but a summary of the observations of 1 or 10 or 1,000 other people in the past, across maybe 500 days or 2 years or 5 years, etc., all put together, or maybe 5,000 years as well. So theory is basically the sum total of the experiences of somebody with respect to something. We know about the motivation theory about Maslow. He arrived at the theory by wandering about in Andhra Pradesh. That's what we hear. And therefore, he came to the conclusion. Therefore, a theory is a conclusion. We need theories all the time. If you look back on yourself, everything you do now and in the future, and whatever you did in the past, whatever actions you took, was on the basis of theories that you made for yourself or theories that you heard from others. I give you that example of rains, clouds, and umbrella. That's a simple theory that you abide by. If you think there are clouds outside, you pick up an umbrella and then go out, hoping that or thinking that it will rain. That's a theory. So evaluate different contexts. You can use this in the sociological context or the economic context or the national context. If you raise on income taxes, are you going to get more income? Maybe you could do the simulation for this. If you reduce taxes on this or that, etc., will you get more income again? You could try that. So therefore, you could use a simulation to understand the impact of action under different situations. Education and training, because simulation is so powerful, I would think it would take 100 to 200 times more in formal education as compared to a game. I repeat that. If you were to play a game and then you on a particular for a particular context, and if you were to have formal training or teaching, that teaching or training might take about 200 times more energy, time than a game to understand the same thing. Then games can be used to assess and redesign systems. Well, we think in terms of only engineering systems, but you can use this also in social systems. I give an example of, let us say, an economic model. I talked about taxes, for instance. You can use it for anything for that matter. You can probably have a formal simulation for something that you're going to do in your college or university and see whether it works. Often, in fact, the simulations will tell you how they work better or when they do not work. And that itself is a great learning. Policy interventions, which is quite a favorite in Japan, Germany, I think, and in US also. They run simulations to understand how you could develop better policy. Sweden is popular to do. In Sweden, it's very popular to use simulations to understand medical systems. Germany, I think they like to do it with respect to traffic. In Japan and in Italy, I've heard speakers speak about crisis because they have more earthquakes than we do. So they use simulations to understand how to attend to a crisis, especially with respect to earthquakes and of course tsunamis as well. So policy interventions help you think better, help you respond to situations far faster. Okay, a game in action. How does a game move? Well, first of all, there's no teaching, no test, no marks. The game probably begins with a brief set of instructions as to what to do. In general, a small game is better than a large game. In general, if you're the administrator or the facilitator of the game, you must speak as little as possible. Of course, if it's a large game, you can't say I will not speak at all. You have to be able to speak and explain everything that is to do with the game. You must explain the process. You must explain what you have to do at the end. It means what is the goal. You must explain the do's and don'ts. The game has rigor. You have to do this. You can't do anything more than that. So in cricket, you have those no balls and 6 balls per over, etc., etc. And then repeat something often. Repetition is good because repetition is what builds our skills. Watching somebody do something does not build a skill. If somebody is going to tell you and teach you and say, I will teach you skills. No, you can't teach you skills. The only way you can build skills is by doing it yourself many times. Then, of course, reflection. Reflection is the source of experience, and experience is the source of, well, learning. And of course, in a game, the discovery of error. Not everybody does the same thing. Somebody does the right thing and gets wrong answers. Why? Even that error is good. Even that error makes her sharper for the rest of her life. Which, of course, a regular lecture, classroom lecture kind of a thing cannot really attend to. Now I come to the most important thing, the first word in our program, fun-based. What exactly is fun? I'll let you read this one so that I can go deeper into it quickly. Fun in games arises out of mastery, out of comprehension. It is the act of solving puzzles. Learning is the drug. So this Foster basically says, when you mastered something, when you understood something, when you solved problems, that is what makes games fun. In fact, a game is nothing but a microcosm, a micro world of your life. In life, every time, even when you're talking to somebody, it's a game. You're trying to influence him, you're trying to win him over, you're trying to win an argument or whatever. So it's fun. Once you've convinced him, you're mastered, so you feel great. And that conquering that battle with your friend itself, of course, you don't tell him it's a battle. That's solving a puzzle. And maybe you learn something along the way as well. All that is fun. Fun is not a joke. Fun is not, at least in terms of a game, it is not a Hasya Kavi kind of a thing or a Kapil Sharma kind of an event. Fun is in the context of a game, coming from mastery. And what exactly is mastery? Mastery is able to outwit something, outbeat something, conquering something, solving a problem, and so on. And when you've done this, you have moved one step higher from yesterday. You have become better than yesterday. So which means every time you play the game, you're having fun. But then let me take you to another level of fun. It's very difficult to pronounce that name, so I will call him Sikh. C-S-I-K. Sikh has said this long back. This is 76, 75, 78, something. He first started thinking about it. And his research were embedded in games. Before the word fun came into common usage, he called it flow. He said flow was a position in a game where the player lost consciousness of time. You were so engaged with what you were doing, you forgot all sense of time. Now you can see the connection between flow and fun. So let me read these things quickly. Flow means intense focus in the moment. Which moment? This moment, now. Maybe you can compare it with what we call meditation. It is not mindfulness. This is totally you're focused on what's happening now. But in mindfulness, you become aware of lots of things around you. It is both action and awareness. You know what you're doing, you're intensely aware. Loss of consciousness. There are lots of sounds around you, you don't hear them at all. Imagine yourself sitting, waiting for a flight or in the railway station. You pick up a Sudoku and start filling it. You don't hear anybody. There's a lot of noise around you. That's flow. Or maybe you play chess somewhere out in the public, in the park. You don't hear any of those noises. There must be children playing, birds singing or making lots of sounds. There are people shouting, speaking loudly on the phone. You don't hear any of that. That is flow. Stronger control over actions because you have condensed your action to doing only that game. Distortion of the temporal experience. Your time, sense of time is gone. You are only in this moment. Why? Because for you, this experience of being in the flow is the only reward, and that reward is intrinsic. Nobody is paying you money to get involved in flow. Now you can compare the flow with fun and understand that that is what a game can give you. So here are two common words. That word storification is something that I have created. Simulation is more connected to something called scenario. but I wanted a word that rhymes with gamification. So I've written this. Gamification is not making a game. Gamification is something else. Gamification is using game-like elements in non-game environments. There's a formal definition that goes something like that. It means you can use it in other game-like situations, such as non-game-like situations, such as you're giving marks in class, or frequent fire conditions, or your cashback. All that is gamification. Storification, unless you have a story to tell, whether real or imagined, you don't have a simulation. And if you can combine the two, you could have a business operations game, you could have a recruitment game, you can have a motivation game, or whatever you want. You can apply these things also in a lecture, in an assignment that you give to your students. And of course, you can construct the questions in such a way, you can gamify the questions as well. That is, you can make a question, you can make a short story out of maybe 2-3 lines. That will be one sentence, that's the problem. And the next question could be a question that is linked to this. The first one is a story. Research on games. Now, this is intensely personal. So what I'll do is go through this very quickly so that to tell you that games can help you dive deeply into the activity, and you can come out with the results that surprise you. This was the result that we tried to find out. What is self-efficacy? Self-efficacy is basically the belief that you can do something. So we looked at game self-efficacy, which is the game players believe that he can do well or that he can win. In this case, we narrowed it down to a business simulation game in a competition. We tried to find out from the participants, what did they think were the elements of their belief that they could win or do well in that game. I think our sample size was something like 220, 230 or something. And this was what we found. This is a research from a game. This is a research from a one-day business simulation game, somewhere in 2017-16, I think. So the self-efficacy, which is the belief that I can win in a game, is composed of actions, traits, and belief. I must be innovative. I must be prepared to experiment. I must be focused, and I must be prepared to generalize and draw conclusions. I must be open to experiences, other people's ideas and suggestions, recommendations, so on. I must be proactive. I must be quick to act. And I must be determined to do something. And finally, I must be convinced that I can do something. These are the collection of factors that make me a better game player. Let me take you to one more example of game research. Here, we try to understand the interpersonal competitiveness. Interpersonal competitiveness between me and my friend. Let us say two people in an organization who are both fighting for a promotion. One of them will get promoted. Or 5-6 people who are likely to get picked up at an interview. How do you understand that particular behavior of interpersonal competitiveness? We did this in somewhere in 2004, and this is what I found. The sample size was something like 350, 370, I think, 379, I think. It was a business simulation game of one day. They were CAT students. And from them, what I learned was this, that an individual who was interpersonally competitive, that means I want to win, I want to do better, I want to get ahead, means I should be aggressive, not really aggressive, in a measured kind of way. Every game, you have to have measurement. A game that does not have measurement is not a game. A game that does not tell you how far you have progressed is no game at all. So I have to be aggressive. I have to be able to measure my progress. I have to be proactive. That means I have to be quicker than others. I should be pushed by myself alone, not by others. So most items that you see outside in real life are sometimes pushed by extrinsic motivation, the salary, the name, the title, and the perks, etc. So in an interpersonal competitiveness, I should be pushed by myself. I should have a winning orientation. I want to win. And of course, I need to be able to express myself, whether mentally or orally. It does not really matter. I should be able to be articulate in what I say. Most recently, we try to understand what was meant by player satisfaction. So on a sample of something like 597, I think, we try to understand what exactly does the players mean when he says, I am satisfied. So here's the result. This paper was presented at in September 2021, the ISAGA conference at Indore at Sri Vaishnav Vidyapit Vishwavidyalaya. My colleagues were Dr. Dubey and Dr. Dar. You probably know them. And we found that these are the factors that are descriptive of a player's satisfaction in a game. What do they do? If I'm satisfied, I'm excited. I'm challenged. That is, there's a problem there. Then there is a learning experience for me. I need to gain something. Then if I'm working with others, there has to be a team victory. And finally, I have to be able to discover something from that experience, something that I did not know before, and something that is personal to me, and something that I can do it myself on my own. The question is, can we use these elements, excitement, challenge, learning experience, team victory, and self-discovery? Can we use this in our everyday lives, teaching, assessment, assignment, etc., to make life exciting and satisfying to our students? I think it's possible without much great difficulty. I'll stop here. I don't think much time. I only have photos perhaps of games that have been played, but I'll stop here. There's nothing here much. It's okay. I'll take time to explain all this. It's better you, I'll stop here because there's barely 15 minutes left. I hope I'm not exceeded. Okay.
Yeah.
Dr. Rao.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Vinodji. You made a very, very research-based presentation. In fact, we are all using the, can you please stop sharing, sir?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. We are all talking about the simulation games as one of the very effective tools of learning, because outcome can be felt, can be seen, and it is tangible when we learn through games, simulations, and leading to experiential learning. Because the students are now, looking for very, very productive engagement. They don't want any kind of just, storytelling and leaving them. They want some kind of, hands-on experience. They want tangible learning experience, for which the game, the games or simulations, we call them fun-based learning. They want fun, they want excitement. And that is possible only when they are given and exposed to the practical, the hands-on experience of practical learning. That's why most of the ODL, open and distance learning courses, also focusing on experiential learning, like gamification, scenario analysis. Even social media is also adding a lot of value nowadays for learning, particularly the experiential learning. Friends, either you can chat, you can message in the chat box, or you can unmute yourself and ask the questions. For me, I have been, very much enjoying the session because I believe in this subject, I believe in this model, I believe in this pedagogical tool, because I always get connected with the students, both formally, means within the classroom, even outside the classroom. Many people come to, the social platforms and say they want some kind of, excitement. They want engagement. And we teachers are not, actors or, comedians to make them a very, very fun, based learning in the class. But we need to make them appreciate the experiential learning, for which we need to devise various tools, pedagogical tools particularly. So gaming definitely will give an exposure to them to understand the reality. And very, very important term Dr. Vinodji used, that is self-learning and self-discovery. That self-discovery is possible when they are part of the game, when they are part of the simulation, when they are part of the experiential learning. Anyone else? I think you are all, complimenting the session. Really, the session is fully amazing, very exciting, very useful, very productive. Like that, several compliments are there. But we wish to listen to you, the audience. Anybody wants any particular, clarification on anything? I think Dr. Vinod is ready here. And one more important thing, there are so many senior faculty members here, industry professionals are there, even the early starters into academics also are there. Very happy to have, I cannot call one by one, on this screen, but I'm very happy to have wonderful people. They are all really, I think, enjoying the session. That's why, though there are opportunities to enjoy the session, through YouTube and other social media, but they are paying attention here. Yeah, there is a one question call, from one of the participants, Vinodji, how to create game in finance? All functional areas, I think you are experiencing and experimenting. Just focus on finance area because it is asked.
You start with objectives. Make a list of 4 or 5 objectives. Take a small area. Let us say, just to understand cash. Reduce it. Cash, which part of cash? Inflow, outflow, balances. You be specific. You need to understand that. You saw the pyramid with respect to Bloom. Below is knowledge. You need to be at the second level. That means the understanding level. You need to be able to explain your objectives at a level without looking at the objectives. So that is number one. Second is that now you write, what do you want them to learn at the end of it? For example, once you play the game, what should the student say? I have learned this. What do you mean by this? And this is more specific than the objectives. So now we have O, let's call it IPO. We have O, which is the output of the game. Output of the game comes from some input, isn't it? So find out what that I is. For example, where does cash flow come from? That is input. Input gets processed by something, becomes output. For example, input can be 5 apples at a price of 10. The P, that is IPO, P is the process. So 5 to 10 is a process. O is 50. It sounds very easy. Actually, it is very easy. But to reach that particular point, we need to reach a stage which is called understanding, which is to be well beyond the knowledge part. We should be able to say, what should be the output? From the output, you need to come back. Don't start with the input. From the output, you come back. Let me give an example. How do you make coffee? So first you decide what you want that coffee to be. Is it a chicory coffee or just a coffee? Is it a decoction coffee or instant coffee? Is it Nestle's or Brook Bond? What is it? So you first write that. That's an output. And now you go backwards in terms of the elements. the milk, the coffee powder, the water, the heat, the vessel, etc., etc., and the process. How long do you want to heat it? It's easy after that. But the thing is, I'm explaining how to write the coffee without looking at a textbook or a recipe book, which means you need to be able to explain the cash issue without looking at notes. It has to be an intuitive way of understanding cash. The same thing with whatever else you want to explain in finance, whether it's how to write, how to make the balance sheet, or how to understand the ratios, or how to understand a debenture instrument. First, if you can get the goal right, that is the output right, the rest is very easy. If you can do this with one or two examples, after that you'll be making these games in your sleep. Take my word for it.
Yeah, sir. One more gentleman, Dr. Prithvi Raju from SRKR. He is asking that is it possible to conduct this kind of business games in the areas of OB, organizational behavior, logistics and supply chain management, etc. I think it is possible, but how you can just explain for a minute.
See, a game is not a product. A game is a service. A product, you can go to a mall and pick it up on the third shelf in the third room or something like that. For a service, you got to a hospital, you're going to find out which doctor has to attend to you, and he will determine whether you need a surgery or just a few tablets will it remove your pain. Or maybe you need to go to the physiotherapy, which will take care of you. You do not know what is the right game for you. So it is dangerous for you to say, I want this game like this. It is best to go to the person, which means you need to describe your symptoms. So I would not be able to tell you that you take this game or that. But to have a game in every aspect of human life is possible. And that includes OB and other things that you said, logistics and all that. It's possible, and there are games also available. But whether they fit you as products is debatable. It's dangerous. Games far away from you in terms of miles, I'll put it like this, will be different from what you need because of culture. An American game, a game from Germany or Japan or Australia is most likely not fit you. If you have the time, make a game yourself. You can start with the role play game and then build upward. It's not too difficult. It is not expensive.
Sir, one more participant, Ms. Annapurna, is asking, can we convert the real scenario, real maybe a case study into a game?
Oh, yes. I mean, what is a game is not a scenario. And a case study is a number of scenarios put together. A scenario is just a name. If you look back that list that I gave you, it has scenario, it has case study, it has Panchatantra. Panchatantra is what? Is it real? Talking animals? Come on. Poetry? Poetry is just expressive of something. What is at the base of this is an idea. An idea of a series of events, if I may call it that. And that's a scenario. Whether it's called a case study or a natak on stage is only a name. Mahabharata, the film, is a simulation. Why is it a simulation? Because there are several versions of Mahabharata available. Ramayana also is another. If you look at the Ramayana as told in Indonesia, it's quite different from what it is done in India. My father told me about a different kind of Ganesha in Myanmar as it existed those days, 50, 60 years back in Burma. They had two Ganesha, something he told me, I remember. It was quite different from India. So what happens in different country will not apply to you. I know it's very fashionable to take the latest US game and apply it, but I think you need to find out whether it fits you. If the balance sheet is different from ours, how do you expect your students to understand? Any scenario, any description of anything can be converted into a game.
Yeah. Friends, for the benefit of all the participants, I wish to tell one more thing. Dr. Vinod is very, very known for basically strategy games. The business as a whole. Instead of, a function-wise, maybe, HR area, marketing area, finance area, operations, supply chain, or even R&D, whatever it is. Every organization has, divided the activities into various, functions. Instead of taking function-wise games, function-wise experience, function-wise simulations, and he is very good at making the strategy game. A strategy which is actually coordinating and compiling various activities and seeing that everything is properly balanced. Suppose the organization wants to increase the sales. It is good. Increasing sales is always better. But how? At the same time, they need to produce more. They have to purchase more. They need to recruit more. Like that, it all depends on various other functional areas. So without compromising any kind of, costs, but they need to enhance the value. They have to create the value. They have to maximize the returns. That is where Dr. Vinod is very, very popular. I think we can invite him for a hands-on workshop for maybe 2 days or 5 days program. Definitely the participants will experience and learn so much. I'm really happy to have Professor Narayan Reddy Ji here. He is an executive board member from South. Professor Reddy Ji, we are very happy to have you here with us.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, Professor Reddy Garu is the director at Tirupati.
Sri Vidyaniketan Institute of
Vidyaniketan Tirupati. He is the former director of NITIM, National YSR Institute of Tourism and Hospitality Management Institute. Happy to have wonderful people with us today. I'm really thankful to Dr. Vinod Dumblekar ji for facilitating this session. And I thank all the participants who have been contributing so much for very, very productive learning. And I thank Sri Venkateshwarlu, the Executive Secretary of Association of Indian Management Schools, who sits in Hyderabad, who facilitates through his office, Dr. Sunil Misrohini and his team. We are very much thankful to Venkateshwarlu Garu. We are all thankful to the various institutions, the members, and the management schools for deputing their faculty and making this event a very, very participative, very, very learning oriented. Professor Reddy Garu, would you like to say anything here?
Thank you, Professor Prasada Rao Garu.
Yes, sir.
The session is a very, very interesting session, and also our guest speaker is really an expert in the relevant field, and the students in the present generation needs the expertise experiences of people like Mr. Vinod, and this will help a lot. As you said very rightly, we can utilize his services at our institution level more effectively also. And I'm very, very happy that in spite of his regular activities, he has accepted our invitation. And on behalf of AIMS, I also thank all the participants for having joined this session in spite of having some special day. Today is some special day, and many people are busy in visiting temples and all other places. So that's why I too joined a little late actually. So,
friends, actually one more important point I wish to add here. Dr. Narayan Reddy is known for, very, very affordable entrepreneurial activities. He always comes with very innovative ideas in entrepreneurship, and he does a lot of study And those studies are converted into research degrees also. That's why I'm very excited to introduce him to this August gathering. And Reddy is known for producing, the research papers and research thesis based on just, ideas and various enterprising activities from the known, sometimes, very, very close circles only he is able to produce so much. That's why we are happy to have.
Thank you, Prasada Rao garu. And so let us have his session again and again at with a little bit of intervals, so that across the country we can spread his knowledge to various students at various levels. And this session will definitely help the students. That's what they see. The session helps the participants and students to widen their perception about real thinking, actually. So therefore, the session is very useful, and thank you very much. And for the good session, let us have more and more sessions with him in the days to come. So let us connect with him soon.
Yeah, Dr. Vinodji, on behalf of Association of Indian Management Schools, I request you to share and extend your support that ISAGA, International Simulations and Games Association, we wish to collaborate with you, with the ISAGA also. When we conduct annual convention, I wish you also be partner of the event. Let us spread this, because this is the order of the day now. Gaming, excitement, engaging, and very, very productive learning, experiential learning, be it online or offline, but it should be more of productive and measurable one. And students are not looking for just evaluation, they are asking for assessment. So from evaluation, people are moving to assessment. From a single point evaluation, they are looking for peer, assessment, peer graded assessment. So these are all things going to happen in the days to come, and it is going to happen in a very, very transparent way. That transparency is expected, and transparency is to be established. Every bit and piece of learning, and that is possible with gamification, because it's 100% measurable. Thank you so much, Vinodji, for being with us today. And I thank all the participants in Secretariat, the past presidents, the illustrious professionals, the leaders, and a great day ahead to everyone. Thank you so much, and namaskar.
Thank you.
Thank you.